Welcome to APM Terminals Nigeria, where modern logistics meets a legacy of lifting global trade in the heart of Nigeria's maritime industry. With world-class facilities in Apapa, Kano, and Onne, we lift about half of Nigeria's containerized trade and provide direct and indirect employment to more than 10,000 Nigerian families. But we are willing to do more and further develop infrastructure, people, and technology, truly lifting standards in the port industry.
At the Bank of Industry, we provide long-term financial support at very low interest rates to small, medium, and large enterprises in Nigeria's real sectors. Bank of Industry, transforming Nigeria's industrial sector.
What will banking look like in the future? For over a century, we've been growing to meet the needs of an ever-changing world, delivering unique solutions to help our customers reach increasingly bigger dreams. Innovating to create an exciting new world of convenience and freedom, where what you can achieve is only limited by your imagination. Opening up new, more inclusive channels for commerce. Empowering a new generation to reach beyond their dreams and grow into the giants they were always meant to be. We're helping to create a future where there are possibilities and where the world looks up to Africa. Let's awaken the giant in you. You first. First Bank.
come to cafe later, what would you like to order, please?
I would like some pancakes with some spread.
And you?
I'd like a slice of toast and spread.
Golden penny spread, oh. Easy to spread, oh. Good for the kids, oh. The man no go worry.
Well done, kiddos.
Thanks to Golden Penny Spread, easy to spread and good for the family.
Mama like
Golden Penny Spread, easy to spread and good for the family.
We are IHS Towers, one of the world's largest operators and developers of shared telecommunications infrastructure.
That looks good, darling.
I learned from the best.
Glad you will get your bar. Husband.
But it got you to marry me, didn't it? Close your eyes. I have a gift for you.
Wait, down?
Ready? Close your eyes.
Okay.
This is a thank you for all the sunrises that you've given me all these years.
Hey, now you're going to make me cry.
Don't worry, baby. I'll be home soon.
Every moment, every smile, every emotion is richer with the right connection.
Thank you for lighting up my life. You're a real gift.
Are you passionate about lending your voice to public policy issues in your sector? Would you like to see the Nigerian economy transformed? Would you like to be part of Nigeria's journey to sustainable economic transformation and inclusion? Join the team of experts at the NESG Policy Commissions. As the foremost private sector think tank in Nigeria, the NESG has been at the vanguard of driving key reforms in the Nigerian economy. Experts and stakeholders across our 12 policy commissions lend their voices on key issues of national interest, with over 40 thematic working groups committed to driving policy change across sectors and thematic areas. Join us today at nesgroup.volunteersmatters.org to continue the conversations at this summit. For more information, kindly visit our webpage at nesgroup.org/policy commissions. You can also visit the registration desk. Thank you.
Welcome. I'm Osagi Okumba, Country Chairman for Shell Companies in Nigeria. At Shell, we deliver sustainable energy solutions that power the economies of countries and the world. The Nigerian Economic Summit has been a platform for the articulation of policy frameworks for addressing our nation's economic challenges and for fostering meaningful partnerships. The 30th edition of the summit, which is themed Collaborative Action for Growth, Competitiveness and Stability, would not have come at a better time. Now more than ever, we need to come together to co-create solutions to unlock Nigeria's vast potentials. Shell is a proud sponsor of the 30th Nigeria Economic Summit, and I invite you to join us, both in person and virtually, for the summit that holds between the 14th and the 16th of October 2024. Together, empowering progress and articulating a clear pathway for building a brighter future for all Nigerians. See you there, and thank you.
Trust does not come cheap. It's a word you can bank on. The efficiency you can trade with. Trust is the insight you base your business decision on. Trust should give your dreams wings, taking you above and beyond your borders. You have to trust your gut and trust that your dreams are valid. Trust should be what you demand and what every partner should give. In our world of corporate and investment banking, trust is a big word. A word that guides and leads our commitment to your growth and that of your business. Go for growth with your trusted partner.
Ever feel like your bills are playing hide and seek? Like you can't keep up with where your money goes? See your money speak plain English with the budgeting feature on One Bank. One Bank budgeting extends beyond the basics. It is the one key to making your dreams a reality. Here is how it works. Select budgeting from the Pay and Transfer menu. Click on Create a new monthly budget. Now, set your budget limit and give your budget a name. Choose the category that fits your budget from the list provided, and with a simple click on Create a Budget, you are on your way to take control over your finances. Whether it's a luxurious vacation, a new car, a new house, or establishing an emergency
activate it yet. Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome all of us to this very special side event that is focused on gauging the pulse of Nigeria's business environment for informed policy decisions. The way we'll be running, I will invite Dr. Mishaki to make his presentation on the Business Confidence Monitor, and then we'll constitute the panel and commence the conversation. So without much ado, let me welcome here the Chief Economist, Nigeria Economic Summit Group, Olusegun Omishakin, PhD, to present the report on NNSG Business Confidence Monitor Report. Okay, Doctor.
Good afternoon, everyone. In the next few minutes, maybe in the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'll be through with the presentation. The essence is to be able to create some background information that will guide the conversation today, so that we'll have enough time for our panelists and to have more robust conversations around the business environment. The product we are launching today happens to be the first of its kind. It's as a result of the collaboration between the Nigerian Economic Summit Group and the Stanbic IBTC. The idea is to be able to create a more informed decisions or insights that will gauge government deliberations as to the state of the business operations and business environment generally in Nigeria. We all know that, to set the context, we all know that we've been having a very rough time regarding the macroeconomic stability, the cost environment, the cost and competitiveness trap, and also the liquidity harmonization challenge that we've been experiencing regarding whether the government should concentrate on lowering inflation, targeting inflation, at the same time encouraging businesses to prosper via reduction in interest rates. So this is the major context within which the performance of businesses in Nigeria is situated. But firstly, we know that normally we always have data from the government, from MBS and other sources of economic data. We have our GDP, we have our inflation, and so many other useful economic data. But most of the time, some of these data don't have that because they are not of high frequency, so they don't have that policy relevance in terms of the timeliness and the depth of insight. So one of the benefits of this report is that it's serving as alternative sources to the traditional data that we have with us. It's also a source of the leading indicators in that it's likely going to guide and gauge where the direction of the economy would likely be. And lastly, because of the ability to also gauge and get some of the qualitative information and feedback from the field, it helps us to help in dimensioning some of the responses that we are getting that may not be captured in the main traditional data. Now, in terms of the interpretation of what we are discussing today, we have looked at the state of the Nigerian business environment majorly in two dimensions. The first one is the current performance or the perception of businesses regarding what is happening now, and the other one is the future, expectations. The first part talks to the green part talks about whether we have some positive responses, the net responses, and the red one shows the negative part. So we have looked into the essence of having this report, and indeed, as I said, we're going to make it a monthly report. Mostly, if you look at the national strategy, national planning, and other very important strategic documents in most of the developing countries, you are not likely going to see the role of private sector insights, business insights. Mostly you are dealing with macro indicators, but some developed countries are beginning to see the complementary roles of business confidence index in directing a part of the economy. And so we hope that this product, this report, will fill that space also going forward. This is a survey and sampling framework. We surveyed from both from Lagos, Kaduna, Abuja, and Kano. The essence is for us to have a more comprehensive responses from both the north and the southern part of the country, which also captures some issues around the type of businesses that we are interested in. We've also we have different sectoral breakdowns: the manufacturing part of the industrial sector, the non-manufacturing, the service, trade, and agriculture. So we also focus on different layers or types of businesses. Those that have less than 10 employees, those that have more than 10 employees, and the large, the well-established ones. So that we'll be able to have a highly representative feedback. Now, the first part tells us what is happening now. And what is happening now, we compare the performance of businesses from the first 9 months of 2023 compared to what we have in 2024. The information here serves as a base information for this report. So going forward, we're going to be comparing what we have here next month with what we'll have next month and going forward. So what we've done is to compare the state of business environment in Nigeria with what was obtainable in 2023. Let's go straight to the point. The general perception of business performance in Nigeria, when we compare to this year, compared to what we have 2023, shows that there is generally a kind of the belief that things are not working out. And so by data we have about minus 11.13, which shows that this is a negative understanding or perception of what businesses are going through across sector. So, and if you break it down across sectors, we could also see further insight as to how important this is. For instance, if you look at agriculture, which seems to be driving the major sentiment in this form, it shows that all businesses are responding to majorly two types of constraints. The first one is the structural constraints, and the second part is the headline constraint. Those constraints that might change as time goes on. So when we look at agriculture has fundamentally structural problem. And then when we look at what's obtainable in trade, in services, non-manufacturing and other sectors, we can see that mostly all sectors with differences from other activities, but on the average, all sectors are sharing the same sentiment that things are getting worse when we compare to where we started last year. There are two ways we can look at why this. The first one is the current policy reforms and changes that the respondents are thinking that, okay, this is what we think is affecting our businesses, and the other one are the structural ones. So when we ranked what they said, we discovered that the problems with FX and power supply and insecurity happens to be the core driver of this negative perception of business environment in Nigeria. Other factors are very significant also, but more than 50% of the total, reasons are attributed or linked to these three highlighted factors. When we consider also some of the structural constraints, we discover that the power supply, insecurity, and FX happens to be the leading factor also. So we are in a situation where the challenge we are facing now is not just about the headlines, challenges of government reform, subsidy removal, and the rest. Even when we take care of that, we're still going to be backed with the fundamental challenges that businesses have been facing for long. And so this might be important in terms of the policy interventions to help business environment in Nigeria. Then on the looking out for the next 3 months, we asked business owners what is their perception about the state of the economy in terms of the structural challenges or the new reforms or government policy interventions. How will these work together to promote or hinder the businesses in the country? The responses show that on the average, business owners have hope that things might change in the next 3 months. However, the hope is still within the territory of weak, in such a way that the optimism isn't that really believes that things will drastically change. But again, because of the fact that some of the reforms that we're experiencing now have been, enacted about a year ago, and so the impacts are beginning to be, at least we are seeing them materializing a little bit. So in the next 3 months, the belief is that the businesses have the perception that things might be better compared to what we have now. These are the factors also that are driving that perception. Not that businesses believe so strongly that they will keep investing or doing as they were doing before, but because of some of the factors, especially that has to do with replacement of their production capacity, improving the production capacity, and assets replacements seems to be the major factors that businesses looked into that will make them to continue in that business despite the challenges that they are facing in the economy. And lastly, I would invite my colleague to present some sectoral analysis that speaks to the core issues along each of the sector. And maybe in the next 5 minutes, we should be done with that. This part is so important because it helps us to also see differences along responses from trade, agriculture, non-manufacturing, manufacturing, in such a way that the dimensions are not that simple. And so each of the sectors are exposed to different risks. And so we hope that this will guide the discussion today and help us have a better understanding of what businesses are going through in Nigeria. And as I said, this is going to be a monthly product. We're going to be sending this out to businesses in Nigeria to also gauge the government responses and the overall performance of business. Okay, Shakir.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mishakin. So I think the work has been laid bare with respect to varying sectoral performance, with respect to how the key sector we have looked at actually has performed in the period under review. So looking at our Greek sector, we could see that the dominant subsector or economic activities in this sector, which is crop production, which actually accounts for more than 80% of core activities in the sector, also performed more, so it is significantly weak in terms of our rating. It is minus 33.3. And this is to a lot of combination of factors, including issues around insecurity, infrastructural issue, post-harvest loss is still huge in Nigeria, issue around regulatory inconsistency, issue around cost of doing business, and access to finance as well, followed by fishing activities. All other subsectors are mildly weak in terms of their positive performance, looking at the livestock, the agro-allied, and forestry. So it is important to know that the challenges affecting crop production, looking at its share of that sector, actually dragged the overall performance of the agri sector. Moving on to manufacturing, which is actually the key drivers of around job industrialization, has been discussed earlier today. We could also see the key major sectors in this economic segment also performing mildly weak. So we are looking at the food and beverages, that we have a lot of our FMCG space working in there. We have the textiles, we have other manufacturing, and all these sectors. They actually highlighted key challenges around FX. And because our manufacturing sector relies more on imported intermediates, so as a result of that, FX challenges is a key factor. Cost of logistics are also issues that insecurity actually amplified. So these are also challenges, and we could see that this sector on the overall is also performing negatively. Then the next is the non-manufacturing, which looks at the construction. And what we then did was to then further break down the oil and gas so that we could properly capture the key activities in this area. So we actually broke it down into the crude production, the natural gas, and the oil and gas services. Then we then have other manufacturing, other non-manufacturing to capture the utility subsector or economic activities. Overall, it is also a weak performance. However, we could see construction and we could see crude oil, which is a reflection of what the economy is doing. But it is important to know that sectors that are performing on the positive side, though weak, are able to transfer some of these, their costs, to the next level in terms of the value chain distribution. Construction could transfer this to the final consumer. So, and that's what we would have. Then the next is the service sector. Service sectors has that huge advantage to actually move these around. And that's why we could see, in terms of negative performance, it's like the least affected. And it's as a result of the fact that firms in this industry are able to transfer their cost, additional cost, to their clients or their consumer. However, we also see this financial service sector actually driving the growth in this area in terms of the overall performance. It's performing strongly at 49.67%. And I know the books of banks and other financial services firms in Nigeria actually also speaks to this. So by the time the inputs or the data from this sector actually coming in, we could see that this is actually a reflection of it. So see broadcasting, professional services, ICT majorly. One of the key challenges that were highlighted is the issue of availability of foreign exchange. It's as a result of the fact that most of the cost of firms operating in this sector are priced in dollars, and this actually affected them, and we could see this. Lastly is the trade. Across the board, either the wholesale or the retail, we have the negative performance. And key drivers that we highlighted are the high cost of transport. High cost of transport and weak consumer demand. Weak consumer demand. And even at the time we had our stakeholders validation, some of the e-commerce firms actually complain around cost of transport, low demand in these sectors. And these are more of the pointers. It is also important that after speaking about this, we are in ESG, we speak about policy, we speak about actually giving some policy imperatives going forward. So we think it is important that either businesses or government actually look at these 4 areas. First is to control inflation and cost. I know majority of our industry players, they have their own cost hedging strategies in order to reduce cost. But the government or every other agency must look at controlling that price. Price in all our indices, performance indices, was high, and cost of business was very high across board. Also look at the issue of infrastructure and security. It's very important. Access to credit cannot be overstressed, cannot be over-mentioned. We have to improve access to credit, be innovative about our financing, and the last is to boost investment and export. The majority of businesses actually highlighted they are increasing their investment. Just as our chief economists have mentioned, it's all about assets replacement. Since businesses are ongoing concern and they are still in operation, they have to do this. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Now we've seen the report. Very quickly, let me invite members of the panel, and these are leaders in different sectors of the Nigerian business environment, to begin to discuss how it affects what they do. Let me first and foremost welcome here our moderator. She's an economist with the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Oluwaseyi Vincent is our moderator. Let's appreciate her as she takes her seat. Let me welcome here our first panelist. She is Executive Director, Supply and Trading, MRS Holding Limited, supervising trading and supplies of the company in 6 countries, including Nigeria. Please welcome here Ms. Amina Maina. CEO, Stanbic IBTC Holdings, Mr. Demola Shogunle, is also here with us. The Chief Financial Officer, MTN Nigeria Communications Limited, Mr. Modupe Kadri, is also here. The Group Managing Director, Flour Mills Nigeria PLC, Omoboyede Olusoya, is also here. And then finally, the CEO of SYU, Mr. Udeme Ufot. You can see every sector is covered: communication, oil and gas, banking, everywhere is covered. Oluwaseyi fún ẹ o. Take over.
Very excited to be speaking with our captains of industry to glean from, your vast experience and knowledge in, across the sectors of the economy. So thank you very much. Okay, so we've heard, from our economists, we've heard from our chief economists and economists at the NESG. We've seen the, what the report has to say based on what businesses are saying across Nigeria, across the different sectors. So can you just speak to some of the challenges that you're experiencing or businesses in your sectors are experiencing? So for example, we've talked about the FX challenge, we've talked about insecurity, we've talked about the cost of doing business. So if you can just, to start off, just, maybe just give that background as to the challenges that you're experiencing in your individual sectors. So maybe we'll start with you, Mr. Shogunle.
Yes, thank you very much. I will mention maybe 2 or 3 very, very quickly so I can pass on the mic. The first one is that when you look at the level of insecurity, of course, many people will tell you that, oh, maybe we've had an improvement. However, for us, when you look at what we have experienced, is one day, one issue, and you don't want to be overwhelmed, by those issues. Today is Tuesday. Within the last 2 weeks, have we recorded, incidents? Have we recorded operational risk losses? Have we had instances where even some of our staff members, you understand, nationwide, some of them, have been, I don't want to say kidnapped, but temporarily kidnapped? Have we had instances where a staff member haven't emptied the account balance, was even made to borrow from the bank, unlike why she was in captivity, and that one was also transferred. So I'm talking about practical issues, and insecurity is an issue, right? And we face, as a financial institution, we face it, daily. The other one I would like to mention very quickly, you just need to go and check, the quantum leap, when you look at the cost that we've had to incur, right, in terms of whether it's IT cost, and other related costs, because of the FX component of those costs. And we are trying to move so many things around. Whether is, once something once an item has an FX component, we are talking about it's gone up, in terms of Naira value, maybe 2 or 3 times, and that cost is going to hit, your income statement immediately. So I've mentioned 2. The last one I would like to mention very, very quickly is, when you look at, some of the things that have to do with rule of law, is incredible. You didn't mention it here, but last week, we recorded another incident, in another state, a branch of ours that we commissioned and, we opened, between the town planners and some other people. They broke a whole wall to the branch. They lock up the branch. Right. And do we have all the papers intact? The answer is yes. And as I'm speaking to you now, we've got an invoice from one agency. I won't like to mention the name, talking about maybe antenna, dishes, and all those things. It's about 5 billion naira for licensing. Licensing for what? We are a bank, for God's sake. So for you to bring, when you now, and those are part and parcel of rule of law, because the laws are well stated. Right, so we get distracted. You have to contract, lawyers. You have to control sorts of people to deal that. Eventually, you end up in court. Right, so they are there. But I mean, my last statement is that despite all those, you don't want to be paralyzed by the challenges within the system. They are there. I don't want to say we have to blend to those challenges. That's one of the reasons why we've got these platforms. You discuss them, you highlight them so as to unpack them, so that we can focus on real opportunities within the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. So I think we'll go over to Madam Maina. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. So when a banker is talking about insecurity and foreign exchange issues, I wonder what I should say for oil and gas. And really, that's why I was quiet and listening attentively. Because I think that, and in the panel we had earlier, we spoke about that, where we're seeing the impact of the insecurity every day. We see the divestments, whether they admit it or not. We know that part of the reasons that the multinationals or the IOCs are divesting and going deep offshore is mainly because of the security issues that they face. Now, security issues on different fronts, just like you heard from Mr. Demola now talking about whether it's local government, whether it's just people who feel it's their right, because they're from that area. But these are real issues, right? So I think that for us as a sector, there have been times where people have tried to think outside the box. Personally, I don't agree with a lot of things that have been done in that space, but I think it was done out of necessity, But I keep saying that no nation seconds its national security and remains a nation, and that still remains my position. However, I think that the oil and gas sector is a sector that the country cannot do without. And we've seen the numbers, we've seen all the indicators, we see how bad things are. So whether you want to talk about FX or insecurity, because it's also a capital intensive business, whether it's upstream, whether it's midstream, whether it's downstream, it's capital intensive. But the thing with oil and gas is it's not just I would say the products or the natural resources. So whether it's crude oil, whether it's gas, as we saw the breakdown, but it's also the services that goes along with extracting the oil, with getting the oil to where it's supposed to be. And it's just a myriad of problems that we must look at. But what I like is the fact that what the NESG has done now is to start to monitor what goes on, how each of these items or each of these issues affect the business, in its entirety. Because we cannot isolate one issue from the other. The sector is not where it should be at. Let's not kid ourselves. But again, like I said this morning, we must find local solutions to our problems. Nobody's going to come in and do it for us. Nigeria needs oil and gas. Forget what everybody is saying about, net zero, whatever year. But I think we need to worry about today. And whether we like it or not today, oil and gas is our biggest revenue earner, and we cannot discountenance that. Yes. So we must do whatever we need to do. We must monitor those figures, whether it's security, and also think about how you can use oil and gas to just improve the lives of the common man. You have a lot of youth that could be employed. So when you look at the sector, you're not just looking at its contribution to the nation's purse. You have to look at its contribution in its entirety. So I think I'll stop there. And then
fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll go over to Mr. Modupe. Would you like to speak from the services sector? What are you seeing in terms of the challenges that have reflected in the index as negative performance?
I see everything they've said and much more. And it's so interesting that both of them are on different sides of what I see. So a key component of my costs is from the oil and gas. The other key component, this is very hard in a way now, is from my financial services. And so look, from the telecom sector, the first thing I would say is that looking through the report, I really want to know where they put the telecom sector, because that ICT thing and that score you came in cannot be correct, given the cost of the sort of things we face in our business. And I think the telecoms, even as a standalone industry, if you were to actually look at this as a contribution to the GDP, I think it's worth drilling down on that space. And I don't think the sort of statistics I'm seeing here represents that. That said, look, security, we're everywhere. How many, in 774 local governments, there's a base station, there is presence. So security issues are big. When there are some sites, when they go down, you can't have access to them. You have cases where engineers are kidnapped, you don't have access. And of course, the subscribers will be saying, my service is down, my service is... Forgetting the fact that people are being put in harm's way to get those things done. Equipment. Look, because Nigeria is a youthful population, there's a lot of demand for services. You need more sites, or you need access to things like spectrum and things like that to give a proper quality of service. So what then happens is that, how do you then attract the capital? And that's what I was talking about in the other session, which is the fact that you're running a business. The cost of doing business is so high. Most of the things you're using in your business are imported. Energy prices has gone up, so everybody passes on their cost, and I can't pass on my cost. So you have an equation where my revenue, maybe it's even growing with inflation, good, but my costs are 3 times that. I don't have a business. So how would I then be able to invest if I go to my good friend Doc there, and I want to borrow because my cash flows are not supporting, government is not allowing me to generate enough cash to meet my obligations. I run to him, he says, well, Mr. Gattuso just increased the MPR, I have to pay 32%. So how can I thrive with that? What sort of business do I want to do? So I think to the extent that the ICT sector accounts 14 to 16%, depends on which number you look at of the GDP, something that needs to be paid attention from a policy perspective. So all the other issues that we talked about, multiple taxes, MTN, anything MTN, just like Doc said, even the local government wants to collect some levies. Meanwhile, you have the JTB there, the Joint Tax Board, all these things are harmonized, but nobody seems to listen. So when he looks at the environment generally, that's why I said all of the above. And I'm sure, but the only thing they are happy that they're getting away with, they pass it on, and I can't. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So Mr. Omoboyede, would you agree with the findings of negative business performance in your sector? Does it align with what you're facing in your sector?
Okay. First, good afternoon, everybody. I don't know which because when you started and you went to Doctor, I was waiting for Doctor to talk about the profits that sector generates compared to the rest of us, and no one's holding them accountable for that. But no, look, when the BCM was shown, the agricultural sector showed a big decline in numbers. And when you look at the way the Nigerian economy is today, a significant proportion of both GDP in terms of non-oil and employment critically is driven by that sector. Now that sector is affected by a couple of things. The same points that have been raised here. The biggest one being insecurity and the inability for farmers to go to farm the land. Nigeria is still largely a subsistence farming area, and so once you have insecurity, you have a significant limitation on people's access to land. The second thing is we have seen two big things that have not been reported, and I will come back to a point about that which Nigeria suffers from, which is both the floods that have occurred. We've seen the one, we only highlight the bad one in Maiduguri, but there have been floods in the Sokoto Basin as well, where we're seeing white flash river floods coming in from Niger into Nigeria. There's also been drought in certain parts of Taraba and Adamawa that have not been reported. Now, one of the biggest constraints with understanding information in Nigeria is the lack of applicable data that shows us exactly what areas are farmed, what is farmed there, and what exists there, so that we can actually have a good leading indicator as to the volume of produce that's coming out. And without a good indicator of the volume of produce that's coming out, you have no idea as to how to manage the demand in the country. So what we continue to see is an inability for the country to produce sufficient local commodities, which has driven up the price of local commodities. Today, by the way, in Nigeria, an ironic thing is happening. Packaged foods, which should be more expensive, are cheaper than local commodities, and that's wrong. And it tells you the extent of the problem that we've got, and that needs to be fixed quickly. You know, the other part that then is a big problem, which MTN just alluded to, is so you have the current crisis, you have a perpetuation of that crisis by an inability for us to plan for the next wet season or dry season. The dry season is more or less done on us now, farming and planting season, to be able to drive local production. Plus, at the level of interest rates that we've got, you have a significant deterrence for anyone to invest in both capacity expansion or work expansion. So you've got a limitation today, and you've got a bigger limitation tomorrow because there's nothing that's been done that's driven that. What's the impact that we see? We continue to see a satirizing industry in this country where what you're selling from a food point of view continues to be smaller and smaller packet sizes. So you're getting significant satirizing that's occurring. You see significant replacement of meals with, instead of 3 meals a day, 2 to 1 meal a day. So one of the things we have to do is drive like vitamin fortification and things like that, because the 1 meal that people get has to be significant enough for them to be able to cope. So very tough times. And by the way, coming to the index, the thing that we should be looking at with the index and what we would really want is for government to be able to get bellwether and early warning signals as to the problems that are coming and take action. You don't want the index to just be a lagging indicator, because by then, we have already had problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Omoibere. Really appreciate your perspectives there. Okay, so we'll move over to Mr. Ufot. So we've talked a lot about, insecurity, FX. Would you like to add anything, to some of the challenges, some of the things that are driving, negative business performance, across different sectors of the economy? You might want to focus on yours.
Well, thank you, Shea. I think the presentation addresses the business confidence monitor and looks at sectors, looks at companies. I operate in a very people-oriented sector, people's business. And sometimes you have to look beyond what I'll call the shell deeper down to the operators of the business. I mean, I've heard comments about high cost of living, FX challenges, and the security and the like. In a sector, marketing, communications, the media, where compensation may not be as exciting as what you'd find in other services like demoralized banking. You find people who are actually more vulnerable and who are more impacted by the high cost of living. People who are challenged in terms of getting to work every day. And when you're operating in a business that requires high levels of creativity, the morale, the mood of the people in the system is critical, because a frustrated fellow really cannot deliver more creativity. And so we find that when this drift started, high cost of living, high prices, inflation, organizations that could afford to. I mean, I recall that a financial institution increased compensation by, I think, 100%. But when you consider that prices have scaled up in many instances by over 300%, what does 100%, even 200% increase do for the average worker? So what you find in my industry is that the average talented worker is looking out. They want to get out. And even when they are with you, many of them are with you just physically, their minds are elsewhere. In the last 2 weeks, maybe Mr. Kadibro should not hear this, I've tried to hire 3 creative directors in my company, and they've given me same condition. We'll take the job as long as we work 100% off-site. Now, Elon Musk said it all. Anyone who's going to be working less than 40% on-site in Tesla can go elsewhere and pretend to be working. So someone says to me, he wants to work for me 100% off-site. He's going to spend his time working for somebody else and working for me during his spare time. Yes. And so you have a situation where workers in this challenged sector are really frustrated. They can't concentrate. Morale is low. And then to make matters worse, you go looking for some financing, sometimes to produce projects, other times as bridging facility. But it does appear that somehow, with our banking system, the guys who can afford to take billions of naira of loans and not repay get the money more easily than small operators who need just maybe 200 million naira to bridge a few projects. And I can't understand. It took me almost 6 months to secure something as low as 300 million naira. Each time I got to the goal post, it shifted. I moved again, it shifted. New demands after demands until I had to scale up to the bank CEO. Now, not every operator would have access to a bank CEO. So it becomes so personalized. So the main challenge in my sector is that the high cost of living, high transportation has made life very difficult for operators. Talent would naturally drift to where it is well compensated and appreciated. So a lot of these fellows today are actually staying in Nigeria, but working for firms in South Africa, in Canada, in the US, in the UK. I think that when the other sectors can improve, when people say that there's a bit more optimism, yes, we're in services, so we don't have those cost structures like others in manufacturing and so on, how we can shift our people around. Maybe our creativity right now has had to go beyond creating communication, but reinventing our businesses in order to survive. Reinventing how we manage our people, how we compensate them, how we make life more comfortable for them. So for instance, we've been shuffling between a 2-day on-site work week and a 3-day on-site work week. Because we just have to find ways of reducing the cost of transportation for our people. I mean, there was a time, we all know, that even when you could buy the high-cost fuel, there was no fuel to buy. So the biggest challenge in my industry really is access to funds, morale of people who are really frustrated and feel that probably the only way out, being talented people, is to leave the country or stay in the country physically. But in terms of their mindset and the work they're doing, they're out of the country. Thank you.
Hello? Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Alford. I think you definitely dimensioned that really well. Okay, I think we'll just circle back to Mr. Shogunle. So in the services sector, one of the findings from the report was, the challenging business environment. I think you already started to speak to that in terms of, infringements on rule of law. Can you just speak a bit more on what makes the environment so challenging for your sector?
Thank you very much. Look, I'm being very careful here. This is 2024, and I have friends. There are some of our friends or some of my friends who, immediately after, maybe first degree or second degree, they just left the country. So when they see some of us, they look at us as if we've blended to the problems. So when you are asking me this kind of question in 2024, so if there is anything higher than VUCA environment, that's where we are. But because we look calm, we look calculated, we are still able to maybe co-create solutions with our customers, and we are still able to, generate values, look for opportunities. I'm saying if there is anything higher than VUCA environment, that's what we have. So, and I'm trying not to be pedantic. And it speaks to the resilience of, whether you call it resilience within, the Nigerian spirit, right? Because, some of my, co-panelists, they've mentioned banking industry and the rest of them. And it speaks also to some of the things that this, BCM index is meant to be showing us. Did we know that there will be devaluation of the currency? We as Stanbic IBTC, the answer is yes. Did we plan and did we put in place all sorts of scenarios? Yes. Did we share this insight with our customers? Yes. Did we take actions and positions to mitigate the impact on us? Yes. So when those things happen, it doesn't make us to look as if we are not superhuman beings. But I'm just saying that in Nigeria, things are tight, things are tough. The environments are very challenging. What have we done when it comes to, the JAPA syndrome? I mean, where I sit, I can tell you the number of staff members, the turnover. There was a time, normally we are meant to have between 5 to 10% annual turnover. Because you also don't want to be a lake. You don't want to be like a lake. People should go and come back. Our institution is not a prison sentence. If you are not happy with it, you port, you go out. So we are not saying people should not leave. Right. But there was a particular period that we are talking about 25% at a particular level. And so by the time you have seen a scenario whereby some of your staff members, they've now formed, ex-alumni association in Toronto, in Vancouver, yeah. So, but we have to find a creative way. We cannot go to government and deal that. So what are we meant to do? The ones that are under our control, we have to adjust so many things. Benefits, everything we have to adjust very, very quickly. You understand? then we have to also start, feeding the system from the base. As we speak now, on our own, right? We've done about 900 now. We've done 3 batches. We train, we train, new or fresh, graduate from the university. We train them to get certification in AI, whether you call it C#, some of those relevant skill sets. And we'll take the best. The first time we did 200, we took maybe about 13-14%. The second round, we took about 30% of the 200. The third round, we took almost 40%, and it's across the country. So I'm sitting down and I'm telling you, if you want talent in any state of this country, you will get with intentionality. But so I'm saying that those challenges are also meant, if you do the best, you can turn them to opportunities. So we've had to continue to do that. And what this is telling us, or what this BCF is meant to be telling us, is to help all of us, irrespective of our sectors, to be able to plan constantly ahead. Do you understand? Some of the things that we saw, very, very painful. I went to see a customer, we call them MNCs, multinational corporate. And I was telling the customer that within this period, certain period, that the interest rate in Nigeria that was artificially low. You cannot have you cannot have inflation rate heading above 20%. Your interest rate is single digit. There is a bonanza. It's not going to last. Christmas they don't do Christmas 365 days. So I told the customer when that thing will start, that Nigeria or Central Bank will have no choice. They will have to move. And we told them 3 or 4 indicators. When they raise the interest rate in US, Nigeria will be compelled. Because it will put pressure also on the exchange rate. It will put pressure on foreign portfolio investment. They will pull back. In fact, there will be divestment. So, and we encourage them, look, whatever you want to do now that Naira is single digit interest rate, grab as much as possible. I will tell you what happened. A customer of ours took maximum advantage, and I don't want to mention name on this panel. That customer issued almost 150-200 billion worth of short-dated instruments, about 5 or 7 years. My sister, at what rate? Almost about 7 or 8%. They did it before the rate went up. So I went to see a governor. I was asked to wait. This customer of ours was with the governor. Then they finished the meeting. Demola, just wait for me. Then they when they finished the meeting, then this customer of ours hugged me. He was hugging me. So then the governor saw him off. Then the governor came back. This is the governor of his state. They were like, look, I'm the governor. Why is this guy hugging you? I was like, you don't know what we've done for him. If you know what we've done for him, you will hug us. So I don't know whether I've answered your question. I'm just saying, are there challenges? The answer is yes. And please bear with me. Every time I sit in front of customers, because the advantage we've got, I would say in Stanbic IBTC, that's why we have 11 subsidiaries. Some people will ask you, why do you have it? No, look, it speaks to multi-dimensional capabilities. You understand? So that at any point in time, you have one of your subsidiaries that can create and extract value. It's standard. Right. So when you do that, I sit in front of the customer, I will tell the customer, look, because of how we operate on both sides of the balance sheet of most corporates. Whether it's MTN, we are a customer, we make use of their services. My sister here, we make use of that. So we operate on both sides of the balance sheet. So we see at a broader context. So I will tell the customer that for me or for us, we see the good, the bad, and the spectacular. You understand? The good, the bad, and the spectacular. So when you give me one example that is bad, I can give you 5 examples, very, very good. So, I would like to stop here because I don't know the kind of questions that will come up, but, thank you.
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much, sir. So I think we'll just sort of try to round up. So I think another thing we saw from the presentation was this cautious optimism about the future across the different sectors in the economy. Would you say that this is reflected from what you're seeing in your different sectors, and maybe some prescriptions as to how, maybe what the government can do to improve, the level of optimism about the future? So we'll go over to Ms. May now. So maybe we can just speak for 2 minutes each so that we can round up very quickly. Over to you, Ma.
So just to get you right, you want to know what government can do?
Yes, but would you say that, the cautious optimism sort of reflects the outlook of your sector?
So again, I think that in my sector, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of reports, there are different publications that will give you all kinds of numbers. But I always say to people, it's one thing to just take those numbers. It's another thing to probe the numbers, right? Because a lot of the information that we get or that we see is usually not locally tested. Usually not locally. Is usually not locally tested. Okay. It's usually not, there's what I would like to see with what the NESG is doing is I want to see this confidence monitor actually test numbers, right? Let us do something different with what we're doing. Just like Mr. Shogunle has said, where within the bank, they take a bird's eye view because they're financing different sectors, right? And I'm trying to speak about I'm trying to bring my conversation back here. The indices that we will need to see in the BCM would be things that can assist government, can assist private sector, can enable the conversations that need to take place, right? Yes, there's a cautious optimism, but I think that it's, as we say, the can-do spirit of Nigerians, right? We don't take no for an answer. No matter how bad things are, we always find a way to make things work for us. We don't throw in the towel, we don't give up. In terms of government, my position has always been that government should be an enabler. Government has no business in business, right? Government should be an enabler. We need to strengthen, and I think in our own sector, we're starting to see that with the PIA. We've also seen, this morning we spoke about some executive orders that have been passed that is helping, in terms of incentives to bring people in. But in terms of numbers, for us to see all of this translate into revenues, there's a lot that needs to be done. And there's a lot of information, there's a lot of data that needs to be tested. Again, I don't want to repeat myself, but a lot of things we have out there are just people throwing figures because they think, okay, globally, this is what is expected. Globally, this is what should be done. But in this instance, we've got to think local. We've got to find local solutions. We've got to find our own financing, because everywhere you go abroad to look for finance now, the first thing they tell you is ESG, right? And how do you really measure that? So one of the things, again, I mentioned earlier was the initiative by Apple and some of the banks that have come together to put the Africa Energy Bank together, because we need to find money within our own space, and that is where the governments of all the African countries come in, because they need to fund that. We need to find our own funding and then be able to start to monitor the progress within the industry. It's going to be difficult. People will tell you about technology. Yes, the IOCs have technology, but we also need to invest, as a sector in innovation to find technology that works for us locally.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, so we've run out of time. So very, very quickly, 1 minute each, if we can, sirs. So in terms of the outlook for your sector, and any final thoughts you might have as to improving sectoral performance. Over to you, Mr. Mujube.
Right. For the telecom sector, I'll say the outlook is bright for obvious reasons. Look, we're in the fourth industrial revolution. What's going to pioneer that is going to be this digital age, technology, and all that. The Vice President said as much yesterday. However, for that to be a reality, we have to have the right policies in place. Now, if we don't want to have the accident that's happened in the oil sector where people are not investing enough, then that dream will not be reality. So part of the things that, in terms of policy changes, is that the regulation on how you're going about, like in our own case, appropriate pricing, has to go through. You cannot continue to stifle an industry and expect it to contribute to the economy. It's not what's going to happen. So I would say that from the policy perspective, and then you also have to make the environment encouraging. So the way you should look at it is that if today you want to get new players into the telecom space, will they come to the country? The answer clearly is no, because it doesn't stack up in terms of the business case. So if that is the case, then those that are currently struggling it out need to be encouraged to get us across that line. And that's where the policy needs to change. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Omoboyede, over to you, sir.
Thanks. I think first thing is always to try and understand why, when there's a prototype model that we all know that works for agricultural development or for industrialization, and we've spoken that mantra many times, we still always fail to do the things that are required. The cautious optimism will always come because there's a population that is huge and a land mass that is huge. But we've known for years that industrialization is driven by excess agricultural production. We've also known that agriculture is the backbone of the growth and development of the economy that we have. So the question is, why are we not doing everything to drive excess agricultural production? The inflationary pressures that we come under from an FX point of view are significantly driven by food inflation, which is driven by importation of food products, rather than the fact that we are self-sufficient in food production. If we were self-sufficient in food production, we would have better tools to be able to manage the PMS crisis that we have. So it comes back to, how do we drive excess domestic production to the point that there's output for people to eat, but the excess output is what we then use to drive industrialization with unit costs that allow us to become a major manufacturing hub.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Finally, Mr. Ufot, to round us up.
There's a phrase I noted in the report. It was cautious pessimism. And I found it very intriguing. And I must say that's where I am. Because when I look at the key industrial sectors where my clients operate in, and I see the kind of performance reports, I cannot speak of cautious optimism, because I begin to wonder what's coming up next. And I suspect that by the next reports, probably by next BCM, we might find that the service sector is not so positive as we've seen now, because as the manufacturing sector especially is dragged down further, implications for those of us who offer them services, even for telecom sector, the implications are quite dire for us, because there'll be budget costs. In the last 4 months, I've worked on plans for key market operators, and almost 70% of those engagements have terminated at the point of budget discussions. They just don't have money, or they're offering you projects cost levels that just don't make sense. So I go forward with cautious pessimism. I hope it will turn to optimism as we go forward. Thank you.
the optimism in the services sector is actually quite low. So I think it aligns with your view about the future. Hopefully, you know, there are things that can be put in place that will turn that around. So I'd just like to say thank you so much to my distinguished panelists. It's been a very, very interesting conversation. You know, we've highlighted some of the challenges or some of the things that we need to do going forward to improve performance across sectors, and you know, obviously that would translate into overall economic performance. So thank you so much, and we'll move over to the next item on the agenda.
Thank you very much. Well done. Well done to you.
Please remain on your seats. Remain on your seats. Thank you. Very quickly, the report will be formally launched by the chairman of NESG, and then it is not even with cautious pessimism, optimism. It is with exuberant optimism that I welcome Mr. Olani Yusuf to please go and launch the report.
All right, thank you. So it's with exuberance, so we all must laugh and smile even as we read this. But thank you all very much. I think this is very important. The board of the NESG felt that we needed to have a more timely, forward-looking monitoring of the business environment, such that we can quickly highlight issues and be able to discuss those issues with the relevant authorities. And so that's what I hope this BCM will do. It's going to be a monthly production by the research team and ably supported by Stanbic. So, Demola, all they're saying is important. What they're saying is important that you continue to be conservative, to keep the capital of your savers and ensure that those monies are well kept. So that's why banking is conservative. But it's a tough business environment, and I think Mr. Ufot says it all. Talent is global. Talent as an option. Talent is mobile. And so we all need to ensure we promote the right environment in Nigeria. And it starts from engendering the right level of confidence. And so I hope that this business confidence monitor will help us change the narrative as a nation. So on behalf of the board of directors of the NESG and our partners, gives me great pleasure. I think everyone should have a copy, right? Yeah. So on behalf of the board of the NESG and our partners, Stanbic IBTC, and the research team of the NESG, I'd like to formally launch this maiden edition of the Business Confidence Monitor, and which will be a continuous, a monthly monitor, and we'll use that to track in a more mobile way the level of confidence in the environment and how that can be used to shape and inform policy decisions. We are moving gradually from not just policy advocacy, but influencing policy implementation. That's one of the mandates from the board. And so this monitor will be one of the tools that we intend to use to shape and influence policy decisions and their implementation. So thank you to all contributors. As you read it, comments, feedback, and if you also want to participate in the survey, please reach out to the NESG team. Their details are at the back. Dr. Mishakin Muiwa of Stanbic IBTC and Dr. Taiwo of the NESG. So all three of them will welcome your feedback and your comments on how this can be further enriched. Again, all we do is in the national interest, and we hope that this will be one additional tool that can help us transform and modernize this economy. Thank you.
So now he can join you now for the photograph, please. Okay, so I'm very sure the copy of the report will go to everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you.